You're listening to an Airwave Media Podcast.
Hey everybody, Spencer here. I just want to announce that Laura, Michael, and I are going to be taking just a little bit of a break here. We're not going to leave you with nothing. Actually, some of our listeners have mentioned that they didn't even realize we covered multiple theories in our earlier episodes. So we're going to reach way back there, pull out some of those theories that you may have missed, and republish them here, whether as a refresher or as an introduction to these fascinating fan theories. We'll be back with new episodes in just a couple of weeks.
As a charge nurse, you can be a confident and dynamic leader who supports the nursing team and guides their patient care. Grand Canyon University's RN to BSN online degree program equips you with strategies that prepare you to manage the ever-changing realities of healthcare while maintaining focus on family support and patient outcomes. What do you think making a difference in healthcare looks like? GCU offers over 250 high-quality online programs like this one. Find your purpose at Grand Canyon University. Visit gcu.edu.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Fan Theory Queries, where we analyze fan theories from all over the internet, but mostly Reddit. I'm Laura.
I'm Michael.
And I'm Spencer. I have a question.
Okay.
Is the Grinch the sole survivor of a brutal genocide committed by the Who's?
Oh.
You know, I think...
Hold that thought. Let's discuss after a quick break. And we're back to talk about the Grinch. This theory comes from Reddit. The user is Evil Valentinflation. The Grinch is the sole survivor of a brutal genocide committed by the Who's. This person based their theory solely on the original book and animated movie. So the original, like the very first one. Nothing like with Jim Carrey or Benedict Cumberbatch. First off, there's his appearance. He's clearly physically different from every other Who. Taller, green fur, yellow eyes, etc. He's a member of a completely different race than the Who's. But there's no other member of that race in sight. We also know that he's not just some genetic aberration. The cartoon version mentions he gains the strength of 10 Grinches plus 2. Not 10 times his own strength, but the strength of 10 people like him, plus 2. So, where are the rest of his people? Simple. He's the Grinch, not a Grinch. They've been wiped out. Every last man, woman, and child besides this one lonely survivor. But who, pun intended, could possibly have done such a horrible thing? Who, pun also intended, do we know that have a near fanatical belief in their religion? Who, this pun was completely accidental, makes up 99.9% of the population and controls all the resources? The Who's. For some reason, their religion caused them to wipe out the entire race of Grinches, leaving only one alive. It wouldn't be difficult. The Who's have massive numbers on their side. One man had 96 daughters, and for a supposedly peace-loving people, seem to have some giant knives, as well as giving their kids javelins and bows. It also would be believable. One of the few things we know about the Who's is how super religious they are. Them deciding to go all Deus Vult on the Grinches for refusing to follow their religion wouldn't be hard to believe. The Grinch survived, likely due to him being frozen in ice, only to be thawed out 100 years later by 2 siblings. More realistically, he likely fled or was already living as a hermit, allowing him to escape the slaughter. He lived at the top of a remote mountain, and due to his cunning, likely had a number of traps and defenses set up. The Who's were content to ignore him, so long as he was out of the way. So, of course, the Grinch hates the Who's for killing everyone he ever knew. It's mentioned that he hates them all year round, not just at Christmas. But Christmas makes him even more enraged. He wants to forget about them, but on that day, the noise they make causes it to be impossible for him to do so. Even more enraging, they're singing religious hymns of the religion that killed its people. It's highly possible that Christmas was the anniversary of the Genocide. It's highly possible that Christmas was the anniversary of the Grinch genocide.
No, we're going
The
with
Genocide. I like the Genocide.
Okay. We'll keep that. At the end of the movie, the Grinch is shown making a change for the better. Did he, though? Notably, both the book and cartoon state that some say his heart grew 3 sizes that day. It doesn't just describe it happening, it states that certain people would make that claim. It's Who propaganda to cover up the harsh truth. The Grinch had grown depressed and knew the Who's would kill him for ruining their special day. He was open to death, especially if it involved screwing them over and letting them know the Grinches would never give up. However, at the last moment, he had a change of heart. not out of love, but self-preservation. He decided to assimilate instead and pretended to join their religion. That allowed him to not live in a cold cave and also granted him a measure of security. If he pretended to be a convert who was truly inspired by them and declared so publicly, the Who religious officials couldn't kill him without public backlash. Too long didn't read. The Grinch is the sole survivor of a purge by the Who's, wiping out all non-believers. At the end, he's forced to convert in order to escape his life of poverty and seclusion. And that's the theory.
Okay, so real quick, I looked up because I don't know all of my religious history. Deus Vult is ecclesiastical Latin for God wills it, and that was a Christian motto relating to divine providence. It was first chanted by Catholics during the First Crusade as a rallying cry.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So there's that.
First, I'll say, and this just occurred to me because I actually didn't read this very thoroughly before I picked it. The religion, the Who's religion, I'm going to say is a made-up one. Even though it's Christmas, there's nothing that I see in the movie or book that specifically refers to our version of Christmas, like it being the celebration of the birth of Christ. Am I correct? Like there's no crosses or manger
they worship
scenes?
Dahu Dores.
Yeah.
Who's that?
Dahu Dores.
Well, I know the song.
Vahu. That's who they worship.
Okay. People have done horrific things in the name of religion, as we all are aware. So, thoughts? I do like this comment from M. the Loud. Has Horton heard
You
this?
asked for our thoughts, and then you start reading comments. What's
Laura, what are
going
your
on
thoughts?
here? So, I have a weird amount of Seuss knowledge. A sentence I never thought I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
However, I'm afraid that in my cross-examining of this, I'm going to bring in evidence that was not brought forth in discovery, in that I would be using books that were not mentioned. So
That's
will that
not
be allowed? Okay.
No,
Disallowed? We are not allowing
because they
Horton Hears a
explicitly
Who.
state that this is based off of those two things.
Okay, Horton Hears a Who is out. All right, then read your comments while I think of something else.
Okay, so this might help you. Michael, did you have anything before I read the comments?
No, go ahead with the comments.
Okay. Statisticus says, exploring this idea a little further, does he really convert at the end, or is it just a ploy? In the book, the last page shows us the Grinch sitting in the middle of a big gathering of Who's. They think he has come to join in the festivities and carve the roast beast. I see him holding a big knife with a beatific smile on his face and wonder if it's vengeance at last. I'm vengeance. So having read that comment, Michael, do you have anything?
Yeah, I'll just lay out pretty much all my thoughts on this. So I actually like this. I have always thought that the Who's were really annoying, personally, in this story, and not that I necessarily agreed with the way Grinch handled things. I just have always been sympathetic towards his reasoning. I've had neighbors before in places that I've lived where they make a lot of noise. They are singing, playing music all the time. I understand how annoying that can be, especially when you're trying to sleep. And
especially if they killed your family too.
Exactly. I'm getting to that point. But just based on the annoying neighbors bit, I can see he's a little justified in what he does. Now, if it's true that the Who's killed his entire race, then yeah, like, it makes sense. I mean, this is a fake religion, but I'm going to compare it to what happened with like the Crusades and things like that. It was the Catholic Church basically deciding they wanted more power, so they threw around God's name and did despicable things to people and were completely the antithesis of what they were preaching, essentially. We've seen it happen in reality. I don't see why it couldn't happen in this piece of fiction, and just that coupled with the fact that I think the Who's are annoying. Honestly, I would like to think that they are the ones responsible for all this. Yeah, that's where I'm at.
Okay, Laura?
Okay, I've formulated something here.
Okay.
What if this is an allegory for the plight of the Native American?
Okay.
Of the Grinches were indigenous to the area. The Who's immigrated from another part of their speck of dust that they live on. and brought a disease that Grinches were especially susceptible to.
Mm-hmm.
And that wiped them all out except for Grinchy Poo, so that he is isolated in that cave, and therefore that's what ended up saving him from the disease. Also, from what I remember of that original animated film of this, Max, don't forget Max, he's very important. He's like the only dog around.
Yep.
And that is also a very rare specimen in the area. Along with the Grinch, Max the dog is very singular in his existence as well. And yes, I could see, maybe not the genocide, maybe not the
Genocide.
crusade. Yeah, sorry, my apologies. The Great Genocide by the Who's, or a holy crusade, but I could see this as being just expansion. Again, it still kind of follows along with what you're saying, Michael, of looking for more power, and the way they find that is by expansion, discovering, settling, claiming these places. But it was just a disease that they carried with them that spread to the Grinches and the dogs. Oh, the dogs. And that's how we got where we are now.
Yeah.
And the Grinch, maybe he sees this acceptance as a way of getting some kind of resistance to the disease, or like an inoculation, or maybe that by this time, because I believe the big thing as far as for Native Americans, it was smallpox, which we've pretty much eradicated by this time. So possibly for this story, the Who's have by now eradicated that disease. And so now the Grinch doesn't have to worry about it anymore when he goes around the Who's.
Depends on how old he is. He has to be up in that cave a pretty long time.
That's true.
It does make you worry too about the fact that his heart grows so fast,
Yeah, he needs
so
to get that
large.
checked
That is
Well, hold
a
on.
big health implication there.
It says that they said that his heart grew. Some say his heart grew 3 sizes that day.
But in the cartoon, it even shows it, because remember they do the quote unquote X-ray, and the X-ray shows the heart grow.
That is a representation of what some say.
Okay.
I like that because there has to be some explanation of why he's the only one like he is.
Yeah.
So I like that. I love that they say that the Christmas is the anniversary of this happening, because that makes his hatred of that particular day that much more reasonable. And especially like if I'm putting all these things together, including this person's comment, like if he's pretending to assimilate and pretending to join the religion to get his vengeance, there he's prime and ready. Like he first tried to get his vengeance by stealing Christmas, and then that didn't work. And because they still sang. And so he's like, you know what? They still are happy. I'm going to give them back what they want and pretend that I have seen the errors of my ways. And then I can go on a slaughterfest with my knife.
Yep.
Maybe he's going to wait until they like just feast themselves into a coma.
Yep.
And he'll do that whole like, I'm pretending to eat, but I'm throwing it over my shoulder. I'm not really eating.
Yep.
So then he is primed and ready to go on the offensive there. Yeah.
I love it. All right. So here's what we're going to do. I want you to think of your verdicts, but before you say them, I want to share this awesome piece of collaborative poetry in the comments of this theory.
Okay.
Everyone basically took turns adding rhyming stanzas to reenact what happened. So each stanza you hear is a new user adding onto this narrative thread. So here we go.
Totally down it.
So what happened to the Grinches? Well, in Whoville, they claim, those green ones had it coming. We're not to blame. We gave them a chance, said the blood-spattered Who's. They had plenty of time to change their religious views. So we stabbed them with sword and we bashed them with mace for the glory of Whoville and the superior race. So remember, young Who folk, on this most festive night, that old Who folk saying, it is might that makes right. And be sure to sing loudly on each Christmas day to make that Grinch suffer from his cave hideaway. Loud and performing, we'll be here all night, and the Grinches stay quiet, scared of the deadly Who might. We'll have the last laugh, the Who's gathered to say, the mother of the Grinch was the roast beast carved that day.
Wow. Wow.
Whoa, okay.
highest rating that we have is Genius. This is reserved for only the best theories, which we believe are better than the actual canon. The next step down is plausible. It's a good theory, it's believable. Unlikely is next. It's not a terrible theory, but pretty unlikely, as the name suggests. And then the last thing is preposterous. These are the theories that are just stupid. Basically, we're all dumber for having listened to them.
All right, so Michael, what's your rating?
Reddit users are harsh, man. Okay, so my rating is actually going to be Genius. I love it. I love everything about this. I would prefer this to be the actual canon over what happened in the other stories. So yeah, Genius all the way.
What about you?
I'll go with Genius as well. And I would like to see it put back into the context of the newer, I think it was Sony Pictures version.
Illumination.
Illumination, thank you.
Yeah.
Version of the movie start with Benedict Cumberbatch. That's our favorite version
That's
now
mine too.
that we watch. Okay. That's our favorite version. We watch it every Christmas now, more than once. And I would love to see that context placed around that Grinch and those Who's to see, especially with Kenan Thompson and Angela Lansbury was the mayor.
Yeah.
And
and Pentatonics shows up.
The Pentatonics sing. Yes,
they do have that flashback of him being alone in the orphanage.
It's so sad.
Mm-hmm.
It is so sad. What if that was like a concentration camp version? If they put it in the context of that movie, that could be almost like a concentration camp, internment camp location that he was the sole survivor. Oh.
Who's our evil man?
Yeah, well, I've got to give my rating too.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go with Genius as well. I love it. And there are several people in the comments that are like, yeah, this is great. No one really had any big, points of contention. And so I think it's great. And even in the context you presented, Laura, with like the eradication through virus or whatever, I think that still works too.
Yeah.
And I think it's great. So thank you all for your input. Fan Theory Queries is part of the Airwave Media Podcast Network. Visit airwavemedia.com to listen and subscribe to their other fine shows like All Creatures, When Things Go Wrong, and Who Arted?